This is Performance Anxiety on the Pantheon Podcast Network, and I am your host, Mark. And today's guest brings me back to a simpler time. Welcome Natalie Gordon of Tele Novella. I learned about her family connection to radio and her parents' decision that she should be a concert pianist after they inherited a piano when she was 5. Well, while Natalie may have disagreed, it is what got her into singing and steered her to a performing arts high school after getting kicked out of her previous school, and that's where she took secret guitar lessons. She formed the band Agent Ribbons, where everything was first-time DIY. So they may have overdone a few things, maybe took a wrong turn or two. For example, after building up a following in California, moving to Texas because of 2 Weimer honors. And Natalie tells a story of the event that spelled the end of Agent Ribbons, but how it simultaneously spawned Tele Novella. And it's still a roller coaster ride. They weren't happy with the way things were going, and Natalie left music for about 3 years. But leave it to good old PBR to bring you back in. That's a beer for those who don't know. But the Pabst connection actually helped shape the sound of the band. Tele Novella has a new album out called Poet's Tooth. The music is reminiscent of great Western sounds I and my dad actually grew up on, like Marty Robbins. Listening to it makes me feel like I'm right there with the band in Lockhart, Texas. It's on Kill Rock Stars, so grab it, download it, stream it, follow Tele_Novella_Texas on Instagram, Tele Novella on Facebook, and we are at Performance ANX on the socials. Get our merch at performanceanx.threadless.com. There's a new design up there you might like. Coffee can be shared at ko-fi.com/performanceanxiety. Now let's take a walk through the West with Natalie Gordon of Tele Novella on Performance Anxiety on the Pantheon Podcast Network.
Okay. Are you ready? This is Natalie from Tele Novella. We just released a new record called Poet's Tooth, and I hope you enjoy my interview about the record here on the Performance Anxiety Podcast. I'm going to do it one more because I got shaky. Is that like normal though? Is that how people do it? Okay. So that wording is fine. Okay. Let's try it again. This is Natalie from Tele Novella. We just released a new record called Poet's Tooth, and I hope you enjoy my interview about the record here on the Performance Anxiety Podcast. Yes! Okay.
The way I normally like to start these things is to find out how you got into music in the first place. Like, was it a big thing in your house growing up, or were you like forced into lessons, or did your parents play a lot of music? How did music have an influence on you as a kid?
I was totally one of the people that was forced into lessons.
Nice.
My family are all pretty big music fans, but they're really mostly interested in classical and jazz. Oh. My grandfather owned the first jazz radio station in Sacramento, California.
Oh, wow.
And had quite a huge jazz record collection when I was growing up as a kid. And then I think when I was around 5, we got a piano. We inherited it from a family member. And so my mom signed me up for lessons at age 5.
Oh, wow.
And I had a love-hate relationship with it. My parents were really strict and would make me practice pretty hardcore every day because they kind of wanted me to be a concert pianist. And so, I didn't share that vision for myself, but I did enjoy a lot of things about playing piano. And I think in my early sort of preteen years, I started really getting into kind of more like alternative pop music, like Tori Amos and Fiona Apple. Oh, yeah. So I started playing all of their songs on the piano and like kind of getting the guts to sort of sing along with it.
Oh, wow.
And
okay.
And that was definitely my start. I really only played piano until I was about 16. And then basically what happened, the long and short of it is I got pretty much expelled from my high school, which is a long story. Oh. And my parents were like, okay, you're going to one of these hardcore private schools, even though we barely have any money. We're straightening you out, kid.
Oh, man.
And it was a situation that was really scary because I knew that if I went to one of those schools, I'd really get picked on. And so I found out about this experimental performing arts, like like charter school, and you had to audition to get accepted, but it was still a public school. Since it was a charter school, they could use public school money.
Okay.
So I auditioned on piano and I got in. And when I started going to that school, my grades got a lot better and they let me secretly start learning how to play guitar.
Secretly playing guitar?
Telling my parents.
Oh, man.
And so that's really where I basically dropped piano and then switched to guitar. It was a secret at first, and eventually it was like, all right, the jig's up. This is what I really want to do, you know?
Yeah, the dream you had for me at 5, I'm kind of dropping. I think a whole lot of 5-year-olds dream of being concert pianists.
I think that's pretty unlikely.
Yeah. It's not a dream I had at 5, at least. I don't know. So was that the time that you really focused on music and thought this is something you're going to pursue, or was it more of, I don't want to say a hobby, but more of something you thought you could do, but you're still looking at other options professionally?
I think I probably thought that I wanted to pursue it professionally, but I really wasn't the type of kid to super be thinking ahead that much in that way. I really, on one hand, probably didn't totally believe that it was like a viable career path, but then on the other hand, I had no other plans than to play music. So, you know, I mean, that was 16. By the time I was 18 and I graduated, I went to City College because I was really unclear about what the hell I wanted to do. And I tried to do the whole music major path, not knowing if I wanted to teach music or whatever it was. Oh. And I was just bored out of my mind entirely with all of the theory classes and all these like MIDI interface, boring as hell to me stuff. Jeez. So I was like, I gotta do something else. Like, this is not gonna work. And I switched to an art history major and really enjoyed going to school for that. But ultimately, I ended up dropping out of college like 3 years in to just be in a rock band. Oh, wow. Okay. This is all happening in the Sacramento area still? That's where you grew up, right? Yeah. Okay. I was in Sacramento until basically right when I turned 25, I relocated to Austin, Texas. Okay. So what is at that point, I guess, maybe what was the music scene in there? What was the predominant music being played in your group, in your area? In Sacramento, let's see. I mean, it was really all over the place. It was a pretty interesting scene, in my opinion. It was a little bit of a lot of things. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with the artist Chelsea Wolfe, but she's really big now. I love Chelsea Wolfe, yeah. We would play like the same gigs in this like little coffee shop called Luna's Cafe all the time. And this is, for years, she hadn't really gotten fully into this sort of like metal-y sound that she's doing now. Yeah. But it was still like dark folk that she was doing. And she was mostly just playing by herself with the guitar. In fact, my band at the time in Sacramento, it was called Agent Ribbons, and we started in 2006. And we actually opened for Chelsea for our very first show. I still have a poster of it. Oh, that is so cool. And we had a song called Chelsea, Let's Go Join the Circus that was about a conversation she and I had about the show Carnival, which we are both really obsessed with. I heard that. That is a cool song.
Chelsea, let's go join the circus. I will take the trapeze. You can tame the lions. And while we are dressing up, I'll buy you popcorn. When the show is over, we'll stay up all night. Slap your knees and drink your wine. Park your trailer next to mine. They say we know how to have a good time. You heard it? Yeah. Oh, wow. Did your homework. Yeah. It's funny that's coming up because I haven't played that song in years, and I'm actually about to do a live rendition of it after we do our interview. Oh, wow. For like an old school fan, because her and her partner, Chelsea, are about to have their 6-month anniversary. Oh, wow. So I'm doing that video with a little shout out for them. It's that's so cool. Kind of embarrassing, but I'm going to have to relearn it real quick. Real quick. I got to relearn this thing. No big deal. I've had done in like 5 minutes.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Before you skip over this ad, give me 1 minute. Like most podcasts, I pick sponsors carefully, and I use the products that advertise here. Pure Spectrum CBD is a product that has been really beneficial for me. They have a wide variety of great products that can be used on a daily or as needed basis. I've been using the tincture every day, and it's been wonderful for easing anxiety. And I absolutely love the isolate. I use it instead of acetaminophen or ibuprofen, and it's worked so well for the relief of aches and pains. They also have soaks, lotions, salves, gummies, and more, plus an entire line for fitness recovery. They even have products for your pets. See everything they offer at purespectrumcbd.com. And if you have questions, they're there to help. They helped me when I had no idea where to start. After you fill your cart, use code PERFORMANCEANX for 15% off your purchase. Pure Spectrum CBD, Pure Spectrum CBD, Pure Spectrum CBD.
But yeah, so Chelsea Wolfe was out there. There was a band that I really loved that was like kind of like hip hop, electronica, sometimes even kind of weirdly folky, which is hard to say why, but it just sort of was. They were called Sister Cran, and it was the first incarnation of a band that exists now called Rituals of Mine.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
But my friend Tara Lopez was in Sister Cran for years. That was a big Sacramento act. There's a really great band called Two Sheds. It was super beautiful. Oh. I want to say Rusty Miller was in that band, who I think also plays with the guy from Granddaddy. Man, I know I'm forgetting a million things right now, but it was actually a really vibrant, beautiful, happening little scene. So I was lucky.
Okay, because I was curious because the sound of Agent Ribbons is kind of like I don't say alt country, but maybe it was a little folky, little rock, definitely alternative. And so I'm always curious to see how you guys fit and was it easier for you to get gigs and did you do much outside of your area? That kind of stuff always fascinates me.
Yeah, I would say we didn't fit in with the rest. I mean, we were embraced, but musically we were our own weird little thing that kind of had like a punk rock ethos to it, but it was still this sort of like folky songs where I was kind of doing this like Judy Garland thing at the same time. I don't really think I knew exactly what I was, and it is actually like pretty different in many ways to what I'm doing now, even though there's some common threads.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But we were probably a band for about a year, and then we booked our very first US tour, which was like a 2-month tour because I had no idea how long a tour was supposed to be. Right. That was a little overkill. And so we were like really living by the seat of our pants on this like piss poor tour where we were making very little money. And about halfway through the tour, we found out that the band Cake wanted us to go on tour with them.
Oh, wow.
And they're a Sacramento band as well. And so when we got home from that tour, we immediately started planning this really big US tour opening for Cake. And that was so awesome and such a big opportunity for us because we were playing really huge rooms when we'd never done anything like that before.
That's awesome because I can actually see how those the two bands would fit together that'd be a really cool bill.
It did kind of work. Like they're very, I mean, I don't think they get enough credit for being as idiosyncratic as they are. They really created their own sound and they got so big that I feel like sometimes I encounter this attitude from people like they're mainstream sounding, but just because they made it really big, they really don't necessarily have a mainstream sound and they really like created their own niche. And I have a lot of respect for them for that.
They really
I was
did.
Before we toured with them. Sorry, what was that?
I was going to say, they really did, because, I mean, you think of the songs that everybody knows, like Going the Distance, and it's still unique sounding. I mean, it's still nothing like it.
Yeah, it's like classic country. It's a rock band. They have little influences of like hip hop sometimes in a very like by way of Beck sort of path.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's its own sound for sure. So yeah, after about a year and a half of being a band, we did our own tour. Then we were out of Sacramento doing all of that on the East Coast and the West Coast. That was huge. And then years went by, and we also toured with this really amazing Scottish band that I love called Camera Obscura. They took us.
I've heard of that, I think, or I've just heard of.
They're great. They're really dreamy.
I was a photo major, so maybe I'm thinking of the actual Camera Obscura. I don't know.
Well, you should check it out if you don't know them. I think my favorite song by them is called Razzle Dazzle Rose.
Oh, well, I'll definitely check it out.
But we toured with them. And then somewhere after that, we basically just started to realize that maybe we wanted to move to Austin because we had added a fiddle player to the band who lived in Austin. And we were flying her out for all these tours.
Oh, wow.
And she had two like Weimaraners, and she was just like, man, I can't move to California. So we were like, well, shoot, should we move to Texas? And that's kind of what took us there. Okay. So that was sort of our trajectory with how we ended up not in California.
Oh, okay. So you moved to Texas before Tele Novella then. Okay.
Definitely. Yeah.
I was looking at the timelines, and so Agent Ribbon's last album release came, was it 2012, 2013?
Yeah, I think 2012.
And then less than a year or so, Tele Novella came out with the first single. So what caused the end of Agent Ribbons and the beginning of Tele Novella?
So 2012, we put out a little EP, which I really wish we didn't. I wish we would have recorded a couple more songs and made it a record. I super regret that.
For Agent Ribbons?
For Agent Ribbons, yeah. Okay. We put out Family Haircut, and I think it was like 7 songs. So we should have just made 3 more songs and did a record, but that's not what happened. And we were just, when we moved to Texas, it really wasn't the best decision for Agent Ribbons. We had built up a lot of clout on the West Coast, and we toured up and down the coast so often that we really had kind of like a devout little following going on. And when we moved to Texas, it was really like starting all over again. The scene really embraced us in many ways, but they still didn't know who the heck we were. And we were just kind of a brand new band as far as Texas was concerned. So, it was kind of rough, and we were both sort of starting new lives, like constantly moving around. Like Lauren and I, when we went on that tour, it was hard because I feel like neither of us were really in the mentality to be wanting or ready to be on the road again, because we were still kind of nesting and figuring out our new lives.
Yeah.
But I was like kind of being a hard ass. I was like, we need to do this. And then Lauren was like, I think I want to tour less. And we did this long tour, and it was, there's some great shows, but there's some really difficult moments.
Yeah.
And we just were like bickering and having a rough time and facing some like difficult financial decisions. And it was already not the best. And then at the very end in Memphis, we got in a car accident that totaled our car, and Lauren broke her arm.
Oh, no.
And it was just like this disastrous end. And we had like this big show waiting for us in Austin that we had to cancel. We were opening for Tilly and the Wall, and we were so bummed. Oh. And basically, it just kind of like accidentally became the end of the band. Like, she needed to stay longer. I ended up going back to Austin after staying in Memphis for a couple days, and like wasn't sure what was going on. And even before she told me, I kind of just knew that she didn't want to do it anymore. But then she told me, and I was like, okay. So I told our label, like, hey, I think that's it. And they said, oh, no, you don't. South by Southwest is coming up, and you're our headlining act for our showcase. You better figure something out.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh, God, this is so little time. And so within 4 months, I was dating Jason. We had been together for maybe a year at that point, and he was in an amazing band called Bel Air. And so basically Bel Air at the time became my band. It was Jason, Matt on drums, a woman named Carrie who was playing the keys and singing the vocal harmonies.
Okay.
We cobbled together Tele Novella. We wrote almost all new material and only played like 2 Agent Ribbon songs.
Oh, wow.
And then that South by Southwest show was our very first gig as Tele Novella.
Oh my God.
And it was so well received that then we won a contest that the studio in Olympia, Washington, dubbed Narcotic through a contest where if you won the contest, you got 5 free days of recording time at Dub Narcotic Studios.
Oh, wow.
They're basically the recording studio of like K Records. And we won the contest. And so basically on the heels of that South by Southwest show, we booked a little tour up there to record our first CP.
Oh my.
It was kind of like bing, bang, boom.
Wow.
So that's how that band started. And it was very, very fast and awesome how it came together, honestly.
Wow. Yeah, that's a whirlwind right there. Which I guess maybe, fitting for Texas.
Yeah, maybe it is.
When I'm low, I try to say hello to people on the street that I don't know. It's difficult when there's so many faces to remember. But if the world is going to end, please don't be a stranger.
One of the things that I found really interesting is that throughout all of your music, I'm feeling and hearing just from every band and Jason's stuff too, a love of music from the 50s and the 60s and all. There's really this I would say almost like an homage to what I think it sounds like some of your favorite music. And it's not one of those things where you hear like a rockabilly band or something and it almost sounds like a parody or just
little throwbacky.
Yeah, a little too cheesy. You guys don't do that at all. You're paying respect to the music. And I think that's one of the things I love most about Tele Novella for sure, but both of you guys' previous bands, it's really cool. But
I appreciate that.
The very first release for Tele Novella that I heard
our very first release was an EP called Cosmic Dial Tone.
Okay, so.
But that wasn't our first album, so I don't know if that's what you're talking about. But that was our first.
Don't Be a Stranger is what I'm thinking.
Oh,
of.
yeah.
Okay, so other than your voice, it doesn't sound like the same band at all. It's amazing. It's so much more like psychedelic and all. It's amazing. So was that based on having to put things together so fast?
I think so. I think definitely. I think that when Agent Ribbons broke up, I think my immediate thought was like, okay, I have Bel Air as basically the band for this project. And they're all really ripping musicians. Yeah. And I was like, I'm going to seize this opportunity to go in a different direction, which with Agent Ribbons, I wasn't and still am not a very strong guitar player. I'm totally self-taught. And oftentimes, I usually don't even know what chord I'm playing. I'm like sounding it out just based on what I know from piano.
Okay.
And then Lauren did not play drums at all until we put this band together, until we put Agent Ribbons together. And so she had no experience on drums. And we kind of were just, doing the best with what we had. And so that's why it kind of had this, I think, free-spirited sort of ramshackle feel to it.
Okay.
And so with Tele Novella, I was really keen on like pushing myself to try and make more challenging music that didn't sound ramshackle. And I knew that I had players that were capable of being like kind of a more put together cohesive sound. Mm-hmm. And so I was just in this mindset of like, I wanted to write strong poppy music with just really good arrangements where I could take advantage of the really good musicianship of the people I was working with. And so I hadn't really carved out the actual aesthetic of what I wanted to do yet. I just kind of knew structurally how I wanted it to sound. And so that first EP with Don't Be a Stranger on it, and even our first full-length record, which is called House of Souls, that whole era definitely had like psychedelic influences. It was a little bit more, it was kind of like strongly going for the indie pop thing. And I feel like there's a lot of it that still has in common with what we do now, but overall, I didn't really have a clear vision for what we were aesthetically until we did Marilyn Bell. So all that stuff I would consider our confused era.
Well, that makes sense because the track that pops out to me is Heavy Balloon, because that's got this crazy like 60s meets 80s thing going on.
Absolutely.
It's really, I like it though. I think because it's not two things that I would have put two sounds that I would have put together, but I like it.
I think maybe I was influenced by Camera Obscura, that because they kind of mix 60s and 80s sometimes.
So, so you mentioned Merlin Bell. So that album definitely sounds a little more focused, a little more stripped back, a little more maybe centered on the country western sound, like. Mm-hmm. But not like you think of country western now. I'm thinking more like Marty Robbins kind of a thing.
Yes, exactly.
And I love it. And I heard a few things about this album, so I want to ask you a little bit about it. I heard you have a PBR connection with this with that album. What is the connection with Pabst Blue Ribbon?
So after Heavy Balloon came out, we did some brutal tours, and I just moved to Lockhart with Jason. And honestly, I was pretty sure I was done with music altogether. I was opening a vintage store. We felt really discouraged after those tours.
Wow.
That album, we totally respect and appreciate the time and the place of it now, but it was really hard because it just didn't come out how we wanted it to. And it was due to lack of a clear vision of like production and arrangement. And we just really didn't know what we were. We made this record. We put so much energy and money into it, and we just still didn't feel connected to what we were doing. And then on top of that, we had these like very brutal beatdown tours, particularly the one on the East Coast was so hard.
Oh, really?
And there was just a lot of stuff behind the scenes that just felt like the universe was telling us we weren't supposed to do this. So I pretty much quit music for, I think around, I want to say it was like 3 years.
Wow.
And I kind of fiddled around a little bit with my nylon classical guitar in my room. And the little amount of music that I was writing was like much more intimate and tender and kind of like coming from this more honest place rather than kind of goofy and entertaining and like Halloween themed and stuff like that, like the stuff I was doing before.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors.
And so we really didn't intend to record it anywhere anytime soon. Okay. And then out of nowhere, we got contacted by Pabst Blue Ribbon. So weird. We still don't even know why. And they were just like, hey guys, we're just reaching out to a handful of Austin area bands that we like. And basically we want you to do like a little video interview and a live performance at a show we're throwing. And in exchange for that, we'll basically pay for you to record a new record.
Whoa.
And we were like, what? This is crazy.
What?
And we were like, oh, dang, I guess we better do it. I mean, we don't really have an entire album's worth of material, but there's no timeline. Like the album doesn't have to be done on a certain date. The only prerequisite was that the money doesn't get sent directly to us because it's not like we can just spend it on whatever the heck we want.
Right.
So the money had to be sent to a producer with a studio.
Okay.
And so we reached out to Danny Reich, who we made Heavy Balloon with, and because he had just moved to Lockhart. And we really needed to work with somebody in Lockhart because we needed to make the record at our own pace. It needed to be like one song a month so that I had time to kind of write new material.
Okay.
But we were a little hesitant at first because we had just made a record that we weren't super happy with Danny. And it by no means was his fault, but we were just wondering, gosh, should we do this with someone else for like completely fresh perspective? And then we came up with this idea, okay, let's do it with Danny because he's really amazing at what he does. And he's really creative, but we don't want this record to sound too clean, which is our biggest complaint about the first record. It was too clean, too polished, too edited.
Yeah.
So you're like, let's create this limitation by recording the entire record exclusively on a Tascam cassette 8-track that you'd like use to make demos at home.
Oh, wow.
That way we're limited to 8 tracks, and mostly we have to get all the takes all the way through with very, very few punch-ins.
Right.
Sorry, my cat.
No problem.
So Danny agreed to that, and that's what we did. And it came out so great because we couldn't edit it that much. There's barely any punch-ins. It's just like there's a lot of little flaws in there, but it makes it sound really intimate, and it basically sounds exactly how we wanted it to sound.
Never going to let it get away from me again. Couldn't carry that weight if it had a handle on it. But you did.
So we stuck with that same formula for Poet's Tooth.
I believe I also read that you purposefully limited the instrumentation that you used on Merlin Bell as well. So, and
exactly.
Did you do the same thing for Poet's Tooth? Because I hear some very interesting instruments on there, like a rotary phone and some other interesting things that maybe you could find in a vintage thrift store.
Godspeed to you. It's hard to say which way the wind will blow. We're two kids in a trench coat. We got into the show. It's not the eye that looks. Oh, it's the lens that you're looking through.
Gosh, you did your homework. Yes, we had a more limited focused palette, I feel like, for Merlin Bell. We opened it up a little bit more for Poet's Tooth. I'm sorry, I have to see what the heck's going on here.
Yeah, no problem.
Jason? Oh, never mind. It's Jason. I thought my cat was going crazy. Poet's Tooth was like mostly using a really similar palette, but we expanded it a little more. Sorry about that. So yeah, we had a pretty limited palette for Merlin Bell. I want to say we kept it as close to 10 instruments as we could. And I think we did, but I'm not 100% sure. And we also were really particular about wanting every single song to contain an element that at least seemed vaguely medieval-ish to us.
Okay.
Or from like a classic old school country realm. At least one or both of those two flavors to kind of add to the cup.
Oh, cool.
Whereas with Poet's Tooth, we decided, okay, let's stay in the same world, but let's expand it a little bit. And in every song, let's just do what truly works best for the song. And if we have to push the limitation a little bit, we will. And we really enjoyed doing that with Poet's Tooth. But I think that for our next record, we might do something super limited again, just because there's something so challenging and inspiring about those limits, you know? And I think that there were some songs that took us a little too long to record because we had too many options. So we let it go on and on for days, and we're like, all right, it's time to rein this in. And get it under control, you know.
What is the writing process for the band? I mean, is it basically you and Jason? And because the band has progressively gotten smaller with the albums, and now the core is basically just you and Jason. So is it? Are you just writing together, or are the people in the studio musicians helping to add some of the writing to it?
So we actually don't use any studio musicians.
Oh, wow.
Jason and I have written songs together before, and that does happen, and we keep trying to prioritize that. But for the most part, on Poet's Tooth, I wrote all of the songs. Basically, there was like a song that we went into the studio with, but all I really do, honestly, is I go in, I do a scratch vocal and guitar, and then there have been, you know, a lot of times where I did end up playing some guitar on the record, but for the most part, Jason plays almost all the other instruments.
Wow.
And then Danny definitely does stuff too. Danny's kind of like a third member of the band.
Oh, cool.
And he is super creative when it comes to all the percussive stuff, especially if there's no drum set. I mean, when there's a drum set, Danny almost always plays it. I think Jason played drums on a couple songs, but I feel like Danny gets extra creative when the percussion comes from optigan and hand percussion. He really helps us like sculpt these sounds that we oftentimes wouldn't have thought of without him. And so it's only ever Jason, Danny, and myself these days that are playing on the record.
That's amazing. Yeah. Are you guys using a lot of vintage instruments? Because you've got a very older Western sound, and I don't even want to say country Western. It's more like Western than anything.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with you. I think there's a differentiation there. It has we always say like a 50s Western lens, because it feels more that way than what you'd think of a country song sounding like. But yeah, I would say pretty much everything's vintage. All the mics, all the equipment, all the instruments, between what we own and what Danny has in the studio, it's all pretty much old stuff.
Oh, that is...
I think maybe the 12-string guitar is the exception. It's like a modern electric 12-string guitar.
I will let that slide. It's all right. So I have a question about, I guess, the album in general. The album starts with Young and Free and ends with Funeral. So it kind of sounds like a life cycle.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's the theme throughout the album, because I also noticed a couple other interesting things popping up, like vampires and unicorns, zombies and goblins. So was that one of the things that you're still doing, the medieval as well as the Western, it's the country part?
I mean, yeah. It's hard to say when it's just the songwriting process. I do think about kind of like the world, but sometimes that stuff just kind of flows too. I do have to point out there's one cover on the record. Okay. And that is the song The Unicorn is the first cover we've ever recorded on a record.
While in our fairy city there lives a unicorn of old, the queen
by an amazing artist named Peter Grudzian, and he was considered kind of like a psychedelic country folk artist from Greenwich Village, and he was gay, and he also had schizophrenia.
Oh wow.
He's a really interesting man and wrote so many amazing songs, but we really both super connected with that song.
Yeah.
And we had recorded it for like a future covers record, but we decided to put it on Poet's Tooth, the album, kind of after we recorded the song Poet's Tooth, because that song is kind of like a strangely poetic stream of consciousness vibe that's unlike the other songs.
Yeah.
And it suddenly felt like it was in the same family as the song The Unicorn. And we were like, gosh, I think The Unicorn's supposed to be on the regular full-length record. So yeah, all the unicorns and zombies on that song, I didn't write those lyrics. I just kind of felt in sync with it.
That makes sense. It does fit perfectly. I think it's.
I'm glad you think so.
You said obviously didn't realize it was a cover at the time. Or at the time, which would be right now. So
I was 2 years old when I found out.
Exactly. Was there a lot of experimentation? Because I mentioned, you guys use a rotary phone, but there's also like crickets and background noises and stuff. Is that something that you guys like to embrace? Or because I don't remember hearing it all that much on the other albums.
You're right. Yeah. Yeah, I think that was a new thing for us this time. I think we just wanted to create more atmosphere so that people felt like they were really inside a little world when they heard this record, Okay. And those little details can make you feel a greater sense of visual orientation when you're hearing a song. Oh, yeah. Not everybody likes it. Some people would really prefer there's no cricket sounds in the song. They find it like distracting or whatever, but.
Oh, I love it. But
I'm into it too.
Part of it was because I was listening to it over the past few days on my ride home, and it's getting, I'm driving home and it's sunset, and this is a perfect sunset album. This whole album is just like,
oh, cool. I like that.
It is. It just feels like it needs to be listened to while you're watching the sun go down. So it's that's one thing I love.
I'm so happy.
I've got some definite favorites on this album, and I'm blown away. A Hard-Hearted Way. I think that's my favorite on the album at the moment.
Oh, cool. That makes me happy.
What a hard-hearted way that you gaze into me, how you hate what you see, that reminds you of you. I'm not brave, but I'm not afraid of mistakes I have made, but you won't let them fade. What can I do for you?
There are two that kind of jockey for position: Broomhorse and Funeral.
Nice.
Those are my top three on the album, and I love Broomhorse. I mean, Broomhorse, it's got that's the one with the rotary phone, I believe, right?
Totally.
Yes. And one really interesting thing I thought about was Eggs in One Basket. That's kind of different for the album because you've got this funky bass thing going.
I know.
It's kind of like it's not country western, it's like funky western.
They told you not to put all your eggs in one basket, to have a plan B for safer landing, but the universe wants you to ask it for that which you need, and it will answer a little.
Yeah, that one is probably the weirdest song on the record considering what we've been doing. But it was also just so undeniable that we couldn't not put it on there because it's like so fun.
Yeah.
But it's weird. It's like this song snippet that I wrote on a walk. And it was actually a song I think I was kind of working on for the early incarnation of Tele Novella, back when I was writing all the songs for the first record.
Oh, wow.
But I never finished it because I didn't know if it was good or not. And I kind of just like got the motivation to sort of finish it during the time that we were recording Poet's Tooth. And I still was feeling a little insecure about it. I was like, I don't know, is this song any good? And then when Jason and Danny worked on the arrangement, I was like, holy shit, this song is really catchy now.
I like it.
And I loved that it was the first song we'd ever written where the chorus doesn't have any lyrics. Because the chorus is the instrumental. Dun, 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 dun.
Oh, cool.
And it was just fun to have that new switch up,
That is awesome. I didn't even think about that. Wow. I have to go back and listen to it again now. Songs like Hard-Hearted Way sound like it was written with a purpose. Like there's something behind it.
Definitely, yeah. That's one of the more tender ones. I said there's several tender songs on this record.
Yeah.
And when I started letting myself venture into that world more with Merlin Bell,
though it was those types of songs that I noticed people connect with the most than when I'm being silly or metaphorical.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I need to just open up a little bit more and really write songs that I feel like are for things for myself, but also things that we can all sort of relate to, and kind of like dip my heart into that space where it's a little bit more sharing of something that's sincere rather than tongue in cheek or trying to be clever or trying to be catchy, you know?
Yeah.
And that one was the first one that we recorded for the record, actually.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Being basically a duo, when you go and tour, do you have the same group of people touring with you as far as extra musicians, or are you keeping it as a duo for the most part?
We've tried the duo live thing, and it wasn't a disaster, but it wasn't our favorite. We were kind of like, oh, this sort of works. We could do it if we need to, but we really prefer having a band. We have been super stressed out the last several months training. So we need a keyboardist who sings, a bass player, and a drummer. And we have an entirely new crew right now. We had a band when we toured with Heartless Bastards, and it was mostly our friends Kyle and Camille, who are a couple, and Kyle is an amazing bass player, Camille is an amazing drummer, and was singing.
Oh, wow.
And we couldn't quite find the right keyboard player that had enough availability. So we whittled the band down to a 4-piece with no keys. And it still wasn't our favorite, but it was functional. Okay. And then Kyle and Camille got super busy with their country band, which is called Sentimental Family Band. And they both just got like 40-hour jobs now. Like they've both gotten like raises and stuff, and they were like, guys, we love you, but this is way too much for us.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, our album releases in like 3 months. This sucks so bad. But they had to go, and we totally understand. It was such a bummer timing, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
And so we scrambled, and we found 3 really sweet people, and we've been working our asses off at practice. In fact, tomorrow we have a very long, like 4-hour practice, and it's our last practice before the album release on Saturday.
Oh, wow.
And I'm really freaking nervous, to be honest with you.
Don't be, because this works out well for you. This is how Tele Novella started.
I guess that's a good point. But we're in cahoots with a couple of bigger bands about getting some support slots in spring and fall.
Oh, awesome.
And I would certainly hope that it works out to where I can take the crew that we're working with now on tour. But I also know how life is, and it's always throwing random circumstances at me. So I can't say for sure what's going to happen, but that would be lovely.
You mentioned Heartless Bastards. I love Heartless Bastards. I saw Heartless Bastards last time on the last tour. They came through D.C. because I live just outside of D.C.
Oh, okay.
They were amazing. I'm a photographer, and I got some of my favorite live concert shots at that show. It was just so awesome.
How recently was that?
I want to say that was probably 6 months ago.
Oh, okay. Because I figured it was more recently, because I know she's like a tour machine.
Yeah.
We opened for them in DC somewhere, but now I don't remember what it was.
She had the Watson twins, I think.
Cool.
They opened up for that.
Very cool.
Yeah, they were really good. They're funny. I wasn't expecting them to I was expecting like half a little bit of comedy in there. That was great.
That's awesome when people are good stage banterers.
Oh, yeah.
That is not my forte.
Well, I'll tell you, you open up for the Heartless Bastards. You guys come to DC, and you and I will just talk at the show. Everybody else can just forget about it. We'll just chat. So.
I love it.
All right. So you are planning on going out with the full band?
Yes.
We went off on a tangent. I don't remember what the hell I was going with this. I remember. So do you guys tour often? Because I know you've got your own vintage store that you run. I mean, is that hard to tour when you own your own business like that?
It's definitely tricky. There's pros and cons. I also have another location in Fort Worth, which is 3 hours north from here.
Oh, wow.
So I'm a busy bee when I'm here. and balancing the band and the business can be tricky at times, for sure. I think the biggest challenge is honestly just like restocking while I'm on the road. Like the inventory can kind of thin out because it's really hard for me to manage that when I'm traveling.
Oh, I bet.
It would be ideal. I don't know how our tours are going to look for next year, but it's definitely ideal when it's chopped up into segments, like 2 weeks East Coast, 2 weeks West Coast, with like a few days in between, because it gives me a minute to kind of like hurry around and get some things sorted out. But the huge pro, I have to say, to owning your own business and being in a touring band is that you are continuing to support yourself with your regular job while you're on the road. Like with a lot of jobs, you have to take time off and you don't have that income while you're traveling. Whereas in my case, my Square account for ringing up purchases is attached to my bank account. And so those sales are hitting my account on a daily basis while I'm on the road.
Oh, awesome.
So it's like I'm taking time off and there's compromises that have to be made with the store, but at least I'm not going completely freaking broke
Right.
after 2 weeks in while I'm, in the like van life and doing hotels and stuff. So I'm really, really, really grateful for that aspect of it.
Do you ever get a chance to scout out inventory for your shop while you're on the road?
Not as many opportunities as I really wish that I had, but I try to find a couple here and there. When we did the Heartless Bastards tour, I had one, I really didn't have time, but there was one day, I think it was a day off in Iowa City, where I basically completely loaded up the van. And the band was not too pleased with me because it was really messy and insane in there for the rest of the tour.
Oh, man. Hey, you're a business person. You gotta think of the store.
Yes.
What is all right, so by the time this drops, the album will be out. What is the best way for people to find the album, to buy it, and help support your touring?
I guess it's fairly standardized these days to some degree. We're really easily findable on Bandcamp, which is always a great way to buy records and support artists. I don't know how that's going to change because I heard that Bandcamp was just purchased, so I don't know the details of that.
Oh, wow.
But at least for now, we still really love to use Bandcamp for selling our music. Also, we're on a label called Kill Rock Stars, and their website, killrockstars.com, has the releases that we've put out on their on their label, which is our current record, Poet's Tooth, and the last one that we did, which is called Merlin Bell. So those are really the two most optimal ways. But there's a bunch of other ways too. There's like Apple Music and all that stuff.
Okay.
And it's streamable in all the usual platforms. So, you can find us pretty easy. We're on Instagram and TikTok.
Can you give any clues to this covers project you're working on?
We're only halfway finished with that, so half of it is a mystery to me as well. But so far, it's mostly been more or less pretty obscure songs that we just really love.
Oh, cool.
Jason is a serious record collector, and he sells and deals rare records for a living.
Oh, wow.
Is this going to be an audio interview or video?
Just audio.
Oh, okay. Well, just for your benefit really quick, it's like, this is his private collection of stuff that's just not even for sale.
Oh,
it's
my
like
God.
Our house is filled to the brim with records. And then we have another back building that's 2 stories that's filled with all the inventory records.
Oh, my gosh.
So we get to, I get to really benefit from hearing a lot of really cool, deep cuts that I would not find on my own. And sometimes one really resonates, and I'm like, you know what, let's try that and see if our cover of it is cool or not. Oh. And we throw jelly to the wall to see if it sticks. And some of them don't work out very well, but most of them are keepers. That's how that's going. But our friends have been trying to talk us into maybe doing a couple non-obscure covers of songs people know. So we might actually experiment with that next.
Oh, cool. Songs people. All right. I'm going to kind of, I guess I've told enough people about this. I've done an album, and it's not me. Uh-huh. It's all podcast guests, and it's cool. For charity.
Awesome.
And it's all Spinal Tap covers.
Okay.
So I'll throw that out there. If you guys are interested in doing a Spinal Tap cover, so what I did was...
It's a strong possibility that we would say yes to that.
Awesome. So here's what it is. So I had a guest on, Lyle Heisen from the band. Well, he was in the band Das Damen, and he's got a new instrumental band out called the Royal Arctic Institute. So we were just kind of chatting. Das Damen did tons and tons of tribute albums in the 90s. Well, 80s and early 90s, because they were disbanded by like 92. But he said they were self-described tribute album whores. Anybody approached them to do a tribute album, they're like, yes, we'll do it, whatever. So they were on one for the band, the Ruddles. And I was talking about how brilliant of an idea that is, because it's a tribute album for a band that didn't even exist.
Totally. I love that.
So we started talking and we thought, did anybody ever do one for Spinal Tap? And I looked it up and no one had.
That really surprises me, actually. Well, that's interesting.
Some bands would do tributes to Spinal Tap, but never like a various artists compilation. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So I started talking to him and he said, well, if you can get it together, my band will do one. I'm like, all right, you're on. So I've got, to date, the original soundtrack had 11 tracks. I've got all of those covered, plus one song some little demo song that they did in the movie that's not on the soundtrack, and 2 songs from their second album, Break Like the Wind. I've got somebody doing Bitch School. And then I'll tell you about the last track in a second, because it kind of ties into all this. We decided the best way to do this would be to do it for a charity. The podcast network I'm on has connections with Teen Cancer America, which was founded by Pete Townsend and Roger Daltrey. So reached out to them and they're like, yes, we love this idea. Because by that time I'd already had 12 songs in hand and they were all mastered and ready to go.
Wow.
All the bands donated the songs. So, they were usually recording something already. So they would figure a Spinal Tap song out, record it, send it to me. My buddy Jordan from the band Blinker the Star donated all the mastering and the mixing and the mastering. So got all those. They were thrilled. So we reached out to Spinal Tap and said, hey, just in case, I want this to be all above board. So I want you guys to know that I'm doing this. Well, their management got in touch with me and wanted a meeting. So we had a meeting, told them all about the project. They went back and told the guys in Spinal Tap about this, and they're on board. They endorse it now.
Nice.
So
that's really cool.
Yeah. So if you guys are interested, let me know, because we still have some time before the deadline.
I need to hear it again. It's been so freaking long since I've seen that. So I need to hear the songs and remember. The only thing with me is I have a really limited specific vocal range. And so I really only do songs that I actually think that I can do, where I don't feel embarrassed if it comes out.
Well, if you're not, if you listen to
I need to hear it again and pick one and be like, okay, which one is going to work with my voice, And
if you decide, and I've had Jimmy Necco and James Hall, they were going to do a song together. They're awesome. If you're not familiar with them, Jimmy Necco could be a twin for Jeff Buckley vocally. It's insane.
Oh,
but they're really good friends, and they're like, well, we don't really see a song that would fit us. So if you're in the same band, you don't find a song that you want to handle it, no problem. I'm just throwing it out there in case, since you're already doing covers, it kind of...
Yeah, I love the idea. That would be fun.
So
I'm going to talk to Jason about it.
What is the best way for people to follow Tele Novella? The social media links or a website that would be good?
Thank you for asking. On the Instagram, which I think is always the easiest way to me, it's Tele, T-L-E, it's T-E-L-E _novella with 2 L's _TX for Texas. Okay. So Tele Novella Texas. Usually if you just type in our name, it'll come up with our handle, even though it's kind of a funky handle.
Okay.
And then we're just Tele Novella Texas on TikTok. And we're on the Facebook and basically all the places. We're pretty active on social media, so we're pretty easy to find. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hopefully we'll see you on the road close to DC.
Yeah, I really hope so too. It was great talking to you.
You too. Thank you so much.